we've come now to our Friday feature, Movie Spotlight, where we review some of the latest releases at the Korean box office and online. This week we have joining us in the studio film critic Jason Bechervaise. Hello, Jason.
Hello, Django.
And we have the return of Darcy Paquet as well. Darcy, hello, you are back. We missed you.
Yeah, it's great to be back.
Yes, we hope you're doing well. Jason was looking a bit lonely here on this table for the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're glad to have you
solo.
back. So we have two films this week on your return, on either end of the cinematic spectrum, shall we say. We start with another Hollywood tentpole, Jurassic World Dominion, or Jurassic World Dominion in Korean. It screened here in Korea on Wednesday, a bit earlier than other countries, in fact, so we are one of the first to review the film, I believe. Jason, this is the third... Okay, don't give too much away right away. Okay, Jason, this is the third film of the Jurassic Park reboot, but the sixth in the franchise overall, right?
Yeah, so the franchise got a facelift, as all these films do, with Jurassic World starring Chris Pratt in 2015. Now, we're all aware of Spielberg's 90s classic based on the Michael Crichton's 1990 novel that broke box office records and remains one of the most iconic blockbusters of the 1990s.
Sure.
There was a sequel, of course, also helmed by Spielberg, The Lost World. He doesn't tend to do sequels, so that was a big deal. And then there's the rather terrible Jurassic Park 3. That was released in 2001, which almost killed the franchise, really. But, you know, dinosaurs have a habit of coming back to life, especially in the world of Hollywood. And so Colin Trevorrow got to work and made Jurassic World, which I think successfully pulled in Generation X and millennials and fans of Spielberg's original, along with their kids. So it played on its nostalgia, but it worked. I mean, it worked well, I think, in setting up a new generation of viewers. And it spurred a less interesting sequel in 2018, and here we are with Dominion. And so this is essentially a repackaged version of Jurassic Park for the current era of Hollywood franchises.
Sure, okay.
So as for the plot, it's set 4 years after Isla Nubar was destroyed in a volcanic eruption. And so dinosaurs are now cohabiting with humans. So we've got Owen Grady, played by Chris Pratt, and Claire Dearing, who are taking care of a young clone girl who later holds key to stop these kind of giant, scary-looking cloned locusts from destroying the world's food chain.
Right.
So you've got this company called Biosyn that is behind the locusts, and a nefarious but creepy-looking doctor, Seo, who wants to make the world reliant on his genetics. And so basically you have a team that come together to stop him from doing that. Now, in that team, of course, we have the Jurassic Park trio, Laura, played by Laura Dern and Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum. So it's bringing back, the original cast from the original movie.
Okay, so Darcy, a lot of connections to the original film then, bringing back those original stars. The question is, does it work?
I mean, it's a movie that's stuffed with a lot of different elements, and I mean, the locusts are something new, and so in one sense it's very familiar, and in one sense it's just kind of a bit more and more, and I think what's been lost, I guess, by this point in the franchise is kind of the original sense of wonder that people had, because back when the first film came out, there were, I mean, the dinosaurs slowly revealed themselves on screen, and then of course it was an earlier age in technology, but people are like, wow, I'm looking at a dinosaur on the screen, and so that was really the selling point here. And, we're so familiar with them now, and, CG is so advanced and everything else.
But even the CG back then from the original Jurassic Park holds up when you look at it today.
I know, they did a really nice job with the original. And so, I mean, a film like this makes you appreciate the original and what its strengths were and what it was able to accomplish, so many years ago. This one, it's a bit of a mess, to be honest. And, and the funny thing about this is, partly because of advanced technology maybe, but the dinosaurs are in some ways more convincing than the humans, because the humans in the film, like, their decisions don't really make any sense. And like one scene doesn't really flow into the other, and people just kind of pop up and they all end up together, and it feels very random in many ways.
Okay, so a bit of a mess. That's how Darcy has summed it up. Jason, what about for you? I understand you saw it on IMAX, so was it at least visually impressive as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because some of it's shot on location in Malta, and then most of the film is actually set in this kind of complex, and that's filmed in the UK, and you've got all these kind of like British actors like serving coffee, being medics, and it's just a weird kind of juxtaposition. You got this like really kind of idyllic scenery in Malta, and then it's just a lot of green screen for most of the rest of the film.
Sure.
So visually, yeah, I mean it's Hollywood. The visuals are good. I wouldn't say they're groundbreaking. I think Darcy touched on it earlier in terms of the original film. It was just the visual effects were just mind-blowingly good. And here we're familiar with what Jurassic Park. We're familiar with the dinosaurs, we're familiar with the concept, and it's a mixture of everything. But yeah, essentially for me, it was just like, it brought back some of the memories. So again, playing on nostalgia, and there are lots of kind of sequences that were used in the original film. But overall, disappointing. Yeah, overall, it's passable, but I certainly wouldn't go back and watch it again, put it that way.
It's funny. I mean, there was an era in the 1990s where you could sell a film based on its special effects.
Yeah.
And, simply the trailer, you'd see these amazing special effects and you'd never seen that before on screen, so you'd want to go and watch it. But now we can see anything on the screen.
Sure.
So, I mean, there needs to be something
more
like the
that.
Story or the characters, something else needs to really pull you in, or at least the way that the effects are presented.
So generally a disappointing addition to the franchise, despite efforts to bring back the original stars as well. Okay, let's move on to our second Korean film. As we said, very different from Jurassic World. It is a low-budget drama by the well-respected screenwriter and director Shin Yeon-shick. It's called Cassiopeia in both Korean and English. And Darcy, let me turn to you for this one. I take it is a reference to the star constellation, the title.
It is. I mean, this is the brightest constellation that is up in the neighborhood of the North Star. And so it can be used to sort of orient yourself if you're feeling disoriented. And I mean, that's a key kind of metaphor for this film, because there's a lot of disorientation that takes place in the minds of the characters and emotionally as well. It's about a family. The veteran actor Ahn Sung-ki plays a man who, is, somewhat close to his daughter. You get the sense that they weren't really close growing up, but at this point in his life, he spends time looking after his granddaughter, who's getting ready to go to the US. And his daughter is this professional lawyer who's really busy, and seems like she's under a lot of stress at work. And then she finds out that she has Alzheimer's disease, and she's only in her 30s, and so this is early onset Alzheimer's. And so she's in a state of shock. By this time, her daughter has left for the US, but she turns to her father for help. And we see much of the film through his perspective, which I guess is one of the film's strengths, because Ahn Sung-ki is, of course, he has an acting career that stretches 60 years, and he's an amazing, amazing actor. Just kind of, his presence brings a lot to any film. But yeah, as the story goes on, things do get really disoriented, because she starts to lose real sense of what's happening around her, and she's forgetting things, and you feel the characters kind of teetering into this somewhat more dangerous situation. Right,
it's quite a heartbreaking setting. Jason, can you tell us a bit about the director? We said he is well respected in the local industry.
Yeah.
Is this, should we say, a typical film of his, or How should we view it?
Not really, and that's not a good thing in my opinion. It'd be interesting to hear what Darcy thinks. Shin Yeon-shick, he's a director and screenwriter, and I think he's one of the best screenwriters in Korea. His writing's incredible. He directed the Russian novel, The Avian Kind. Also wrote those as well. He wrote the script for Dongju, which was widely praised in the industry. He also made a film called Raymond's 837, which I quite like. And his scripts are, invariably quite layered, complex, sometimes non-linear. He's actually got a sports film coming out soon called One Win, which I'm very curious about, starring Song Kang-ho. So that's going to be more of a commercial film. But here it feels a little bit more, dare I say, simplistic. It's not quite. It doesn't really have the narrative complexity that is associated with his other films.
Right.
A little bit heavy-handed in places as well. There are one or two scenes that I found problematic. But this is a hard subject to tackle.
Sure.
And often, when we think about Alzheimer's, it affects the elderly, whereas here he's looking at this. He follows this woman in her 30s, and so he kind of turns that upside down with the father in his 60s or 70s taking care of the daughter. But I wasn't overly keen on this. That being said, though, I think some critics have liked it.
Right, it's a very complicated kind of scenario, this very difficult position that the main character finds himself in, but perhaps you're saying the film doesn't quite handle it in a more subtle enough way, or bring out all the layers that are perhaps in that story. Yeah,
I think maybe my expectations were too high, and it almost feels like a film he's pulled off quite quickly, super low budget. Just doesn't quite have the complexity that I like when I watch his films.
Darcy, what about you?
I mean, I found it to be quite unique in some ways, even though, there's similar kinds of stories that are told both in Korea and in Hollywood. There's a Korean movie from back in 2004 called A Moment to Remember,
Yes.
that also deals with early onset Alzheimer's. And I mean, that film was much more, I guess, typically melodramatic in the sense that, it really kind of makes you cry, and it's very, but it's kind of romantic at the same time. And that film, it was kind of a typical Korean melodramatic approach to this sort of topic. And then you have Hollywood films that, take you to this really kind of sad place, but they do it in a very smooth way. And so, like, as you're being pulled, from this opening in this kind of more or less happy setting and then going to this very tragic space, I mean, the path is very smooth. And in this film, the emotions of this movie are so raw. And I mean, so actually, watching it, I really felt kind of heartbroken by it because, both because it's tragic, but also, some of the sad moments are really much stronger than you would expect.
So it did work for you then?
I mean, I'm not sure if I liked it or not, but it did hit me quite hard.
Right.
And I mean, there's a lot.
And I'm sure the fact that Ahn Sung-ki is playing the main part as well helps.
Yeah, that too. I mean, he's been such a presence in Korean cinema for so long, and for him to play this kind of role at this stage in his career is interesting as well, where he's kind of looking after his daughter. And but yeah, it's by the time it gets to the end too, the film really kind of twists in the knife.
This is what I mean. It is heartbreaking, and I wish it was a little bit more nuanced. But I don't think I'm.
You're totally sold on it. Okay.
Yeah, I think there are those out there that certainly admire the film more than I do. So and I think Darcy's his comments are certainly well articulate and valid. So,
sure. We're going to have to finish up there. Jason, Darcy, as always, thank you for your reviews, and we'll see you again next time.
Okay.
Take care.
Have a great weekend.